mate. Here in Hawaii, a stormy kind of day, rainy, stormy sort of day here in Hawaii. So after summer and through what is consistently such a, beautiful climate, beautiful temperature, it's nice to have some different weather for a change. So we really look forward to winter, and then these stormy days, they make you feel real homely,
Yeah, it's time for some Portuguese bean soup over there at what's that place? Bob's there in Haleiwa. I forget the name of it. Anyway.
There's a lot of good places. I like the old Cafe Haleiwa.
Pizza Bob's.
There you go. Yeah. And I like the old Cafe Haleiwa for an Eggs Benedict, that's always good.
Oh yeah.
And the Campbell brothers, Duncan Campbell, that's his business, so we like to support those guys.
Yeah, my wife's been trying to replicate the Portuguese bean soup for 15 years now, and has sort of failed. But let me get started here. 1988.
Yes.
WSL world champion at the time, ASP world champion Barton Lynch, the namesake of the Barton Lynch Pro Surfing video game. Barton, if you will, take me back to the finals day of 1988, the world championship title run. Pipeline is perfect. It's finals day. You're in third place in the morning going into this world championship title as the day begins. Tell me how the day unfolds.
Yeah. So, that the lead up to that event, I mean, if you go back a year, 1987, I felt like I was in good form that year. And in the first 7 events, I made 5 finals, had 3 firsts, 2 seconds, and 2 quarterfinals in the first 7 events. And the last event of the year was at my home beach of Manly. And so I felt like my destiny was playing out in front of me. I was miles ahead on the ratings. I'd beaten Tom Curran, who was the reigning world champion, 2 events in a row in the semi-finals on the way to winning the US Open. And then I beat him in the final at the Lacanau Pro in France. So I'd beaten the world champ twice in a row, 2 events back to back, which I'd won. And I felt like I was the best surfer in the world. And I felt like I was going to win the world title at home in front of my family and friends. It was like the dream was coming true in front of my eyes. And then I went down to Hossegor for the next event, and my longtime surfboard sponsor, Aloha Surfboards, as I was putting my vest on to go out for my first round heat against John Shimuka, he came up to me and said, "Look, I think it's best I don't make your boards anymore." And I was baffled because I was actually riding Greg Clough's at the time with his logos on them, and he didn't like that. And we'd had a couple of arguments about it, but his equipment, the boards just weren't good enough. And the boards I was riding from Weber's were winning me everything. And I was like, well, I can't go back. I'm not, I've got to stick with what I'm on. So he dumped me after, decade of, maybe more of being there for me as a sponsor and really a father figure, having lost my dad young. Greg Clough was the owner of the company. He was like a father figure to me. And it really rattled me, and I went out and lost that first heat, and I never lost in the first round, hardly ever. And I lost first round, and that just put the fear into me. And then I went on a bit of a losing spree in the next 7 events. And then we came into Manly, and I was in the running with Damien Hardman, Tom Curran, Tom Carroll, Gary Elkerton, and Martin Potter. And the usual suspects, really. And at that point in time, and, I made the final of the event at Manly, but I got second to Damien Hardman. He won the world title. I got third. And instead of winning the world title at home in front of my family and friends, I had to lose it. Yeah. And it was devastating. It was heartbreaking. And in my mind, I was thinking that was my chance, my only chance, and I just wasn't good enough, and I might have to learn to live with that. Yeah. And that night after the awards banquet, I was staring at myself deep in a mirror and ended up punching myself in the head in the mirror. Just looking at myself so angry, just staring at myself so angry, just going, well, you just ain't good enough, mate. And ended up punching myself and ended up in the ER, getting stitches. Getting stitches in my fist from punching myself in the head in a mirror. Yeah. So that was a really devastating year. And then I went out the next year, 1988, and I wasn't thinking about the world title. I was just lamenting my loss, really. That was all I was thinking about, was how how crappy I was and how I may never get another chance. And that year went on and I never made a final. I had 9 semi-finals, I think. So I was right there, consistent all the year, kept making semi after semi after semi. And if you're that consistent, when you get to the back at the end of the year, you're right there. And it only takes a couple of wins to thrust you into winning a world title. And we went to Australia in November and I won on the Gold Coast. But that didn't even put that thought of a world title into my head. I wasn't even thinking about it, I was just still bummed really that I wasn't good enough. And then the final, so we lead into the Hawaiian series, and again it's those same 6 suspects: Tom Carroll, Tom Curran, Damien Hardman, Martin Potter. We're all there going for the world title again, and it's been dead flat. It's like one of the worst Hawaiian winters on record, and it's been the first Haleiwa's small and ordinary, but I got second in that event. And then we went into pipeline and it was flat in the lead up. I had Davey Cantrell, pipeline specialist, in my first round. Super tough first round. I'm thinking, well, this is difficult. As it turned out, that first round was run at Beach Park because it was such a, there was no swell on the thing and in the forecast, and they were sort of desperate to run stuff. So I got to surf against Davey Cantrell in 4-foot right-handers.
Yeah,
which was a sign from destiny, going, hey, well
it's just the gum sandbar basically.
Exactly, it was the sandbar at Beach Park running into gums on rights. And really not Davey Cantrell's field of expertise, but definitely mine.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So that I should have seen that as a good sign, I suppose, early. And I won that heat against Davey. And then my next round was going to be up against Sonny Garcia. And then January 2nd comes. So it goes through that whole waiting period, and it's January 2nd, 1989, when the event runs, by the time we get some waves to run the event. And, as you said, it was 10 to 12 feet, as perfect as pipeline gets. I get down there in the morning early and go for the first surf in the morning. And the first thing I do as I paddle out is drop straight in on Tom Carroll. because it was, he was the favorite. Everyone was going, Tom Carroll's going to win. It's a pipeline. He's the pipe master. He's the best out there. He's going to win. Yeah. And he's paddling into one. I go, in my mind, not today, buddy. And I just drop in on him and just burn Tom Carroll on one. And I paddle back out and I take off on one, and Dave McCauley drops in on me. And I get smashed, and my board bangs me in the leg really hard and corks my thigh, and I can hardly walk. So I come to the beach, limp up the beach. I go home and I'm icing my thigh. And it gave me something to think about. All of a sudden, I'm more concerned about my injury and getting better to be able to surf than I am a world title. It's not really in my mind, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like it would have been if I wasn't injured. And then by the time I get back down to the beach, I watched the first couple of waves of Noah Budrow and Tom Carroll. And I see the scoring, and I thought, they're not. But Noah's got no chance of beating Tom Carroll. They aren't letting that happen. I go home. When I get back, Todd Holland was his second heat, and I get back, and everybody tells me, "Hey, Tom lost. Tom Carroll's out."
Yeah,
I wasn't even there. I didn't even see it, and I thought they were joking. I'm like, don't be such stupid. Don't even try. That's what are you doing that for? You know what I mean? And then I realized he has lost and he is out. And I go, oh, okay. Don't think about it, mate. Just concentrate on what you're doing. I had Keone Downing in my corner for that event, and those guys reached out to me in Australia and said, hey, do you want us to make you some boards for Hawaii? And I said, oh, I'd love that. And they made me a 6'10", a 7'6", and an 8'0". And as a quiver, they just fitted together so perfectly, even with those big spreads in size. And the 7'6" had these really sharp edges. And after that, my first surf that morning, I was said,
did George make those boards, or did Keone make those boards?
George Downing made those boards.
Radical.
There's some talk on the street that there might have been some help from Kirk Bjerke,
Mm-hmm.
Kirk was working with those guys, for those guys at the time, making some boards. So there was a bit of a collaboration there between George and Keone and Kirk.
Mm-hmm.
And it had this really sharp edge and it was a little sticky off the bottom. I only had 2 waves, first couple of waves. So I said that to Uncle George and he took me over into the that grass paddock at Sunset Elementary across the road. And he's got wet and dry in his hand and he's spits on my rail and it spits on my rail. And Uncle George is there sanding that edge down and tuning that edge in. And I'm sitting there as a little young Aussie thinking, wow, look at that. I've got George Downing tuning my equipment. Yeah. This is unbelievable. And that family have always been, you know, they are family to me. And to have Uncle George there, tuning your equipment for you, this absolute legend of the sport, was just made you feel good, made you feel strong, you know.
Confident.
And then he said to me, hey, you just surf today. Don't you worry about another thing. I'll take care of everything else. You just surf. And to know I had those guys in my corner made you feel local, made you feel like you had a connection with the place, with the wave, with everything. The spit on the rail sanding was like, wow, this is a unique experience, you know, and it felt powerful in that sense. No, I went out against Sonny Garcia and I won that heat. In the end, Sonny got an interference as well, but I won that heat. And then the next one was quarterfinal against Tom Curran, the reigning Tom Curran, who I been a rival with for a long time. And I went out and got.
At this point, did you need to win out to win the world title, or had you sewn it up?
As you're going along, you don't know how it's going to plan out because everyone else has their heats coming up. So Tom Carroll gone early in the day, the door opens. Then I took Tom Curran out myself, and that was good. Damien Hardman got taken out by Mark Occhilupo. And Occy was in the scaffolding, like getting ready, and I was there next to him with him. And he goes, I'll get him, BL. I'll get him for you. I go, oh, come on, Ock. I hope you do, mate. And Ock goes out and takes out Tom Curran. And so, I mean, Damien Hardman. At that point in time, all the other potential world champs are out. Yeah. And I've got to get through the semi-final. So I beat Curran in the quarters. I've got to get through the semi-final against Glenn Winton. To win the world title. And Winton was amazing at pipeline.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the most underrated surfers of the time. So creative, so courageous, and at pipe he was fantastic.
I think maybe the last guy to shape his own boards that was in the running for a world title, perhaps.
Yeah, and the way, you know, he'd glue fins on the rails. I remember him seeing a board that had 12 fins each rail, each side of the board, little fins like 1.5 inches tall all the way down the rail. And he'd ride it and then take one off each side, leave one on one side and have 11 and 10 and try that. And he was so creative and so unique, mate. He was a very, you know, when you talk about unique individuals, Glenn Winton was a unique individual, and he was the wild card that could easily have stopped your dream. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I had to go out and win that semi-final. He got a good start in it, and I was quite scared. You know, I was like, oh, no. And as things turned out, I got some good ones. I won the semi-final. I won the world title. Came in, had to prepare straight away for the final with Luke Egan. It was a long day from dawn till dusk. Went out in the final against Luke Egan. I honestly felt like I lost the final. You know what I mean? When you have those feelings as a competitor in a heat and you think, oh, I don't think, because back then there was no computer scoring. You didn't know how you were going. You didn't know what you needed. You didn't know what they had. And so it was all this mental calculation in your mind.
What was Keone doing when you came in? Were they kind of going, I don't know, it's close?
Nah, they all thought I won.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all thought I won. And I wasn't too sure because, you know, you always underestimate yourself and you're always more critical of yourself. So I was in two minds. They were all 100%. And when I came in from the final against Luke Egan, I thought I was kind of bummed because I thought, you know, it was hard to celebrate, jump around, be stoked. You've won a world title and then get the focus back together and go out and surf the final. But when we came in from the final, the sun was setting behind Kaena Point. It had actually dropped already behind that mountain range. And so it was a massive day, mate. And they had to squeeze the whole event nearly, besides that first round, into the one day. And that's why I had 4 heats that day in perfect pipe. So Sonny Garcia, Tom Curran, Glenn Winton, and Luke Egan. So no easy pipeline run, which feels good. And then I came to the beach, and the first person that was there on the beach, because this was pre-chairing people up.
Yeah.
No one got chaired up the beach back then, right? You walked yourself up the beach,
Yep.
Was Duncan Campbell from Cafe Haleiwa.
Oh,
he
great.
was there on the beach, and I was looking at his face and the way his face looked, because I thought I'd lost that final. But maybe I was just super critical of myself. And his face just told me I hadn't won. I looked at his face and went, oh, maybe I did win. And, and Keone didn't come down the beach. He stayed up in the pipeline house. So it was a very different time. There was not that massive, all the people on the beach and the celebrations and the cheering up the beach. This was the end of the day. The sun's behind the mountain range. It's been a massive day, and the beach is kind of clearing out. You know what I mean? People have been. And so it's a very different scenario to the ones that you get to see nowadays, with all the celebration and the cheering up and all of that stuff. And so none of that mattered to me, though. The presentation was literally in the dark, more or less, people holding lights and stuff to try and illuminate the presentation.
Yeah.
And the little fella from Manly's dream had come true, mate,
That's so cool.
And that previous year before, that was a heartbreak and a really traumatic experience for me. It made me realize that, hey, you don't know why things are happening. You don't know why you're going through and experiencing what you're going through. And this is applicable to anyone and everyone in all situations. And some of the worst situations of your life, when you're going through them, are a good thing, and they're happening to prepare you for something in the future that you don't foresee. And it was a great awakening, an amazing experience for me to understand life, really, wow, you thought that was a bad thing and a terrible thing. And while it was a very important thing, because it put me in a place that allowed me to go through that final day at Pipeline. And I would swap Pipeline for Manly Beach every day of the year, mate, forever. So, if they said to me, well, you can have Manly, or you can lose it here in front of your family and friends, and next year you'll get Pipeline, I most probably would have taken Manly, because I wouldn't have believed them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The old bird in the hand and 2 in the bush sort of concept.
Yeah.
But as it turned out, to have won at Pipeline winning was the childhood dream. To win at Pipeline's a whole nother layer to that dream that I would never have imagined.
That's so cool.
Happened, mate. So it was a beautiful thing. The reality is that, we celebrated a little bit that night, not a lot. That next morning, I was at an ASP board meeting at 9 a.m. as the surfers rep, doing my job as the surfers rep the next morning at 9 a.m. So it wasn't like a, massive celebration of parties, and it was very quiet. And it was just it was a different time, a different world, a different thing. There weren't all these sponsors putting on parties and events and all that stuff. It was just was a very low-key affair, but I liked it that way,
Well, look, let's fast forward some 40-something years here. And I know, isn't that amazing? I'd like to get your thoughts on the recent Vans Pipe Masters we had last year, specifically the women. Tell me what your thoughts are on the women, which I thought was basically history in the making.
Yeah, and it's women's surfing is at that point where nearly every event is history in the making in some way. It has been elevated through the respect that they have earned. Sure, there are times globally that are allowing and encouraging, enforcing almost that type of respect for women's sport. We may have gone past that and into a time where there's almost a movement to decimate women's sport, really, by the inclusion of males in that field. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we've kind of gone to another place, but the place that we were at, where women's surfing was
specifically pipe,
through the performance of the surfers, that's where the respect has come from. It's not a political agenda for us as surfers. It's not. It's watching. When you watch an underdog fight for their existence.
Yeah.
And when you watch someone who's, I suppose, in a sense, you might almost say downtrodden or put on, at a lower rung on the ladder than the male sport, you watch the fight that builds in those people and the determination. And it's very similar to what I've experienced when I joined the Pro Tour in 1983. Pro surfing was, what do you call that, 1976, it's 6 years old.
Yep.
It's been going for 6 years as a sport, and it isn't respected. And the world look at us as beach bum, no hoping, drug addict losers.
Yep.
And our generation's job was to build respect for the sport. The generation before us, Mark Richards, Sean Thompson, Rat Bartholomew, Dane Keogh, Michael Ho, that generation, it created the sport, and our job was to validate it. Yeah. And to make sure that people respected it and saw us as professional sportsmen rather than beach bums.
Yeah.
And that we fought for that position. We fought for the right to be respected and to make people care and look at what we do as something legitimate.
Yeah.
And that's that same path as what we've watched women's surfing travel. And they've fought.
I'm interested specifically in what women are doing at Pipeline regarding, look, I mean, we've had Lane, we've had great women's champions for decades now, but in my opinion, what's happened at Pipeline is historic in that Moana Jones-Wong has this vibe of Jerry Lopez where it seems like I could see her winning 4, 5, 6 Pipeline Masters titles with only, there are some women, Erin Brooks, a young gal, and Sierra Kerr, and some others that are nipping at her toes, kind of like Rory and maybe Jackie Dunn or Mike Armstrong or whoever. But she seems like Jerry Lopez, and she seems like it's hers to lose. Like she's got it. And for the first time ever, she's pulling into tubes and they're doing soul arches. I mean, they look like they've figured it out. And of course she has. So, yeah, I mean, I think the Pipeline's a special beast for the women.
Yeah. And well, she's got that classic style. She looks like Jerry Lopez. I was there watching it live and I felt like I was watching Jerry Lopez. The stance, the style, the positioning, everything about what Moana did was amazing. Without rights at the back door, there is only one person in the world at this point in time who can beat her, and she wasn't in the event. So the Vans Pipeline Masters.
Are you speaking of Caitlin Simmers?
No, I'm talking of Vahini Fierro.
Oh, of course, Vahini.
Vahini Fierro can beat Moana Jones-Wong.
Yeah.
Right? They are the two best.
Yeah.
Without question. They're on another level to the girls. There's not a natural footer on the backhand who can beat them.
Yeah.
And especially when it's 10 feet.
Exactly.
If it's 6 feet and under, then the field opens up. The rights are there. Carissa, the natural footers come into play, and you start to consider them as potential champions.
Which, by the way, if I might interrupt, which is why I think this was a historic day, because they put the women out in a rising long period swell where usually they're like, oh, the swell's dying, the wind's up, put the girls out.
That's right. Yeah, that was a great, and that was in theory though, that day was supposed to build and get bigger and stronger and more forceful as the day went on. So they put the women when they did with that in mind, right? But it didn't really work out that way. No. And when they surfed, that was I believe that there's a natural energetic destiny to things, which is, it's a collective energy that comes together in moments of times that creates history. And that day was one of those where they tried to kind of have it before it got bigger and rogue and too crazy later in the day. But as it ironically turned out, it was most probably the best of the day. And we've seen the best of women's surfing over these last few years because they have had great opportunities in great conditions. And all of a sudden the performance level rises and people are like, whoa, I didn't know they could, but they don't know they could because they haven't had the opportunity to. So it's a wonderful time in that sense. Moana is on another level at Pipeline. There's no question about that. She's definitely on another level even to Vahini through experience and exposure. I think that what we see to sort of become a little more political about what the situation is, there used to be a Pipeline Masters.
Yep.
One.
Yep.
And the Pipeline Masters was the event.
Yep.
And then in my day, when I won Pipeline, it wasn't the Pipeline Masters. So I'm not a Pipeline Master because I won the Billabong Pro at Pipeline.
Right.
And so now there's this confusion as about what is what.
Exactly.
You have the Vans Pipeline Masters, you have the Billabong or the WSL Pipeline Pro for, and then you have the backdoor shootout at Pipeline.
Yeah.
And the backdoor shootout at Pipeline, traditionally the last bunch of years, I've judged it for the last couple of years, the shootout. And the best surfing at Pipeline most probably happens in that event.
Yeah.
Because they send out these teams of people, right, who are the Japanese team.
Yeah.
And when the Japanese team is in that water or the Peruvian team and it's just them and their mates and they can get all the good ones, you see no difference in performance levels from the Japanese or the Peruvian teams to the locals.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's this. So that event itself has a unique format, and it's more the shootout is more a cultural event. You know what I mean? And it's got its place in Hawaiian heritage, in the roster. It makes sense where it sits and how it plays out, because it's a cultural celebration of Hawaiian surfing from the roots of the locals. And when you look at the staffing on the event and the security, all the people around are just the old boys, mate, the real OGs of surfing in Hawaii and that heritage. So I see where that event fits.
Well, let me ask you this, if I may.
Yes.
These days, as you mentioned, the North Shore season right now, early on, it consists, there's always been an early season sunset event. There's a Haleiwa event. There's the Vans Pipe Masters. There's the backdoor shootout, which starts in a couple of weeks. Couldn't somebody cobble together a Triple Crown? Like, in my mind, the Triple Crown's missing. And it seems like there's enough events pre-January to cobble together, because I think it's important that we have a king and queen of the North Shore, that we have a sunset winner, or the three best performances. And now we have this thing, the Triple Crown. What are your thoughts on the Triple Crown? Do we need it? Is it gone? Is it too late?
Yeah, it's been the traditional setup of events here in Hawaii has been kind of restructured. My mind was going to say decimated, but I will say restructured for the sake of commercial purposes, right? The WSL thought they were missing out. They thought that being in December, I see, they thought that was not necessarily the best time of year. And if they ran in February or whatever, they would get better conditions, right? To have a Vans Pipeline Masters, the Pipeline Masters, that original event, back to what it started as an invitation-only event, and where you see people in it because of the stickers on their board, not because of their reputation at Pipeline, right? There's people in that event who, if it was a real Pipeline Masters, and it was based on the abilities on a day-to-day basis at Pipeline, there's people in that event with stickers on their board who would not get a start. So that event, in my mind, has almost been downgraded in a sense because of its commercial nature. It's a promotional event rather than the greatest surfing event in history.
Well,
and they still try to hold.
Kelly Slater was not in the event.
Well, and Vahini Fierro, the other best tube rider in the world, was not in the event. She was there sitting on the sideline, not having a start in that event. So it's a commercial event. And I don't see that in the sense of it being a commercial event. Again, like the shootout, they've copied the shootout in that sense too, where they go out against people they choose in their heats. John, Ivan, and Nathan with Emio as an example of those heats. So it's a very different thing to what the Pipeline Masters was. Some could say that the Pipeline Masters as a world tour event didn't have the best pipeline surfers in it anyway. And it most probably didn't. There's a handful of the best pros who are the best pipeline surfers, or potentially in that conversation about the best pipeline surfers. But the world tour itself doesn't guarantee that the best surfers are in that event either, because it's a different style of event, and they've qualified for the Pipe Masters through other types of competitions and qualifying series.
Let me ask you this.
Again, it's kind of confusing right now as to what's the legitimate event and what's the promotional events and stuff. So I feel like in the commercial, trying to find the best commercial property for themselves and place for themselves and time for themselves, and the messing around with the whole thing, it diluted it in terms of it's important because there's 3 events there that you go, well, they're all equal. There's not, the Vans Pipeline Masters, the Hui Backdoor Shootout, and the Pipeline Pro are all kind of equals. There's not really one of them that stands out above the others.
Right.
For me, really, the best surfing most probably all year is the shootout.
Let me ask you this. Do you know if Kelly Slater was invited to and Gabe Medina? Do you know if those 2 guys were invited and decided not to do it? Do you have any insight there?
I don't have insight on that, but I would guarantee you'd invite Kelly Slater. They want Kelly in the event. 100% they want him in the event.
Yeah.
And those, the Brazilian side of things, bringing credibility and opening up that massive audience that is Brazil, the greatest audience in surf.
I don't even care about that. I just think Gabe Medina deserves to be there competitively.
Well, right.
I don't think there's any question. He's one of the best, if not the best surfer in the world. And at Pipeline, he's proven himself. It's not like he needs to prove himself to get the call.
Yeah, 100%. I felt like that about watching lowers. Like for me to watch a final 5 or whatever and not have Gabriel or Italo or one of the 2 in there just didn't make sense. All of a sudden I was like, well, you know what I mean? It's a 1-horse race, more or less, this show, because it's so perfectly suited to a certain person. And then, so you got to look at the commercial decisions made by WSL in repositioning and restructuring the tour into this Americanized sport where it's got a season. It doesn't necessarily follow a calendar year. You finish at lowers. There's a mid-year cut. There's a top 5. There's only 5 people qualified for that last event. To me, even at that last event, qualification for the final WSL final event should be based on whether mathematically you can win the event.
Yes.
So not whether you're in the top 5. That's irrelevant.
Totally agree.
If you mathematically win the event and you're number 9, they should have a top 9.
Exactly.
Right. And if there's only 2 people who can mathematically win it, it's the top 2.
Yep.
If you're going to do it that way, to have people qualify who mathematically may not be able to even win a world title, but on one day can have a good day.
Yeah, especially at lowers.
I just don't even like it. So a lot of the changes that have come about really have diluted the product in my mind. And I see that in the audience. I see that in the feedback I get. They talk about their numbers being better than ever before, but I have trouble believing.
Have you thought about throwing your hat, your hat in the ring? Have you thought about throwing your hat in the ring as the new CEO of the WSL?
No, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that because the WSL is driven by ownership that has a political agenda. And they are, while we live in a time of our society more or less being wedge driven down the middle and people being separated to 2 sides and this divide, and in most countries it goes along political lines, Democrat, Republican, say in America. Mm-hmm. As we live in a time like that, it would seem to me that we have management or ownership of the WSL that is clearly and distinctly on one side of that political divide.
Yeah.
For me, I would not work for that side of the political divide.
Right.
And I see myself way more in the middle of things and trying to see surfing not as a political tool for a small few, but as a lifestyle and a culture that has so much positivity to give to the broader community.
What if they reached out to you and said, hey, I heard what you had to say. We actually need that. Would you be interested?
Oh, if there was the opportunity to work unhindered by political agenda, I would definitely do that. Yeah. I feel like I could fix it, mate. I feel like I feel like I have ideas in and around the sport through my exposure and experience at it as a competitor. Well, firstly, as an aspiring competitor, someone as a grommet who's there with that dream and looking at that product. Then as someone who lived the product for 15 years and was on the ASP board as a surfers rep for 10 years, I know the politics of that period of time and what went on in ways that nobody else does. There were things that took place during that time period of my 10 years on the board that no one knows the real stories, and I'm the only one that really does. Yes. And when I came out of the Pro Tour, there was a period where I was, to use Bob Hurley's word, black banned because what I had to say or do or contribute was of no value to the ownership, which was at that point Rip Curl, Quicksilver, Billabong, and it was a closed horse for those brands. So then I've been a coach in that space and coaching athletes who compete on the thing. Then I've been commentating it. So I feel like and my involvement with the media since I was 18 years old, I feel like I've got a well-rounded perspective and ability to look at the product from all the different angles. And I feel like I know, when you think of what WSL did when they came in, they changed a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And they fixed stuff, they changed a lot of stuff, broke stuff. But what they'd never tinkered with was the judging.
Yeah.
The most important thing is the judging. The rest of it's just window dressing.
Yeah.
Right. The most important thing is the judging. And I have ideas in and around the way that thing could be judged that in my mind would revolutionize the product.
Like what?
So if you can't do it, you should not be judging it. Okay. And I'm not good enough to be a judge. Right. I say that hands down. When they're in the air and there's those subtle little tweaks and things going on, if it's a simple, basic on the wave face style of surfing, I could judge it.
Yeah.
Pipeline, I can judge it.
Yeah.
Those things but when they go off the wave base and into the air, I'm out of my league, mate.
But can you find a series of people that qualify?
Yeah.
It should be Nathan Fletcher. It seems like it's a very small.
No, well, I think it's a job. It should be, in my mind, the highest paid job. It should, and I've said to everyone at WSL, from Dirk Ziff, the owner, to Dave Proden, to Pat O'Connell, to Kieran Perot, to on and on, Graham Staplebergs, everyone there, I've said, hey, this is my idea for the judging. If you have an event that's not important, okay, let me experiment for you and let's trial another way of judging this thing. It should be a job for the most current elders to pass on the traditions of what are good surfing. Currently, what we see in judging is a tendency to the old less is more concept, which they always say. It's not about length of ride, it's about the volume of the maneuvers. And so what they would rather see now is 2 than 6, right? Where they're driving it, if we go to gymnastics for a second, where they're driving it is towards the vault. If you go to gymnastics and you've got a floor routine, which is a minute-long dance, where you synchronize all of this wonderful stuff into this performance and finish at the end and go, da-da. The vault, you just run at that thing and do one thing and go, da-da. And that da-da of the one thing is where they're taking surfing, and they're eliminating the dance. They're eliminating the opportunity to create this beautiful performance that is similar to a floor routine in gymnastics, and they're preferring the vault. I brought this up to the ISA because now with my work with those guys, I feel like I'm in the right place because they are the future of surfing. WSL, like ASP, like IPS, is a momentary boss of the sport. They won't be there forever. You know what I mean? They're just a momentary boss of the commercial enterprise that is the sport. Now that the Olympic Games is the ultimate in the sport, it's only taken 1 gold medal, and we're pretty much at that point where we're like, well, that gold medal is maybe more important than the world title, right? The ISA as an organization are the ones recognized by the Olympic Federation and who have the national federations all around the world. And in my mind, have the opportunity to retrack the course of surfing to something that the surfers think it is. And it needs to be a discussion. Do you want to be and when I brought it up with the judges in Rio just recently, the ISA Worlds, I said, hey, I'd love to have a chat to you guys about what they did an amazing job. Over there, 15-minute heats, bang, 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 bang. And it was so fast and furious and so exciting to commentate. And I was like, whoa, this is like a sport. Then you go and watch a heat that's 35 minutes long with 2 guys in priority and you're just yawning. And you go, this is the most boring thing. Because the competition, the rivalry, the thing that is the base of sport, we kind of lose that a little bit in the new surfing structure. So back to the judging, it should be the best, and I've said that, the best people their money can buy. And my panel, if I had my choice, I'd have Shane Dorian, Have CJ Hobgood, and I would have people that bring credibility to every decision they make.
Yeah.
Because if Mark Richards tells me what I get, I'm not arguing.
Yeah.
Mark Richards told me, I'm wearing it, mate. What did he? So what you do then is, right, if you've got 5 judges now and you knock off a high and a low, I don't know why you've got the high and the low anyway, if you're knocking them off, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is that system we use now, it needs 5 people to agree to work, to look right.
Yeah.
And so the premise of the modern judging system is that 5 people agree. What's your chances? You're set up to fail by the premise of your existing judging system. It's always going to be controversial because you're relying on 5 scores to come in the same. And if I'm a judge and I'm sitting there, I know myself and I know humans, and I think we'd sit there and go, okay, well, where are we going with this score? Yeah. What are the team going to score it? What are the other judges going to score it? I don't want to be high and low, knocked off every time. And so there's this conformity, this homogenized process of thinking that traps them from being themselves and having an opinion. And if you had those 3 judges, you don't knock off a high and a low, you just have 3 of credibility, the highest your money can buy, and their might. And when the scores come in, I'm in the commentary and I go, hey, look, because the old system used to be 5 judges to 0, 4 judges to 1, 3 judges to 2. You and I could have different best waves of the heat. You could score one ride of a surfer an 8 and I could score it a 4. We could still have the same winner.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's no comparison of scores. You've got your own scale. You don't have to focus on keeping scale. So you get 3 of the best people your money can buy. You mic them up so that when the scores are on, they become your broadcast. And I go up there.
That's
I go, hey,
interesting.
Shane, CJ scored that an 8. You gave it a 4. Why? Well, when he came off the bottom and he caught that rail, that was, for me, the rest of the wave was hindered by that. He lost his rhythm, he's lost his flow, da-da-da. Okay, why did you give it the 8? Well, what I loved about it was da-da-da-da. And the judges educate the audience. They become your broadcast. They're a part of your broadcast. And they share their knowledge and their understanding. You explain judging to the public through their eyes and through the commentators. And you educate, because as it is now, the judges are hidden. No one even knows who they are. It's like there's these people like avoiding.
You mentioned Shane and you mentioned CJ. Do you think they're contemporary enough to be able to dissect what's happening in the air?
Well, they're more contemporary than me.
Well, yeah, me too.
And you would most probably, but what it takes a certain type of mind that has an ability to override its emotion. Yeah. And a competitor does that. A competitor knows that. A competitor has that, especially a retired one who can reflect a little bit and reflect on themselves and understand themselves and their emotional responses and go, oh, okay. And that's what you need. You need that ability of a past competitor who understands the influences and understands it. And maybe they're not current enough, and maybe there's more relevant current people, and that's a fair call. And then you go to the old 5, there'd be three judges to 0 or 2 judges to 1. And that way they can have their own opinions and have their own scale. You use them to educate the audience, and you've got a very different product.
It's a very interesting concept for sure. And you're right. You're gonna have to pay them a lot. And these people are going to be under a lot of scrutiny because now they're lacking anonymity.
And like I said, I've judged the backdoor shootout, and in that event runs like the Pipeline Masters. So what we have to do over 4 days of competition is keep the last ride on the 4th day in scale with the first wave on the first day. Yeah. And you're a pipeline and you have watched hundreds and hundreds of waves. And you've got to reflect and keep all this stuff into some kind of mathematical equation that justifies the glory of moments and time, So it's I understand the complexities of judging from that. And been around the whole time, and it's a special type of person. But the concept is a surfer wouldn't do that. That's what they always say to you. Surfer wouldn't do that, but that's because of the construct of what judging is. You change what judging is, and you turn it into a job for the elders and for the very most respected judge, mate.
Have you thought about a list of guys that might make sense to you? Besides Shane and CJ,
I love those competitive mindsets and the people who have been through that competition. And then I look at I like Shane Dorian in that sense because I know what he is capable of in crazy waves. You know,
well, I like Shane because his kid kind of brings a contemporary level to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about Gerlach?
I feel like potentially, but even if you go to the best aerialists of our time and you go, say, Martin Potter, I don't know that we are validated in the modern era of tweak and twist and flare and Yago in the pool and the stuff you see. I kind of just, my eyes roll in my head. And I go, what was that? And I have to go back and watch it slow. And I'd take 2 days to come to a decision.
Well, I just question if your judging can even happen. Like if you can get, because you're talking about a respected, well-groomed elder, but he also needs to know aerials. And those two things might not coexist.
Yeah, well, I think as people come off the tour, there's always people, I bet, with time. It's not something I've spent too much. I understand the concept that I have in my mind, but it's not something I've spent too much time identifying talent to fill those roles because it's never been embraced.
Right.
The idea's never been embraced.
But you feel like it could work. You feel like you could pull together a crew of judges.
I think 100%. What I would do is I'd appeal to their love of their sport, and it's almost like an obligation. It's the ultimate respect to be asked to judge. When Fast Eddie comes to me and goes, "Will you judge shootout again?" He's not asking me because I'm an idiot. Yeah. He's not asking me because he doesn't respect my ability to sit there for those 4 days. You know what I mean? And so when I get asked to commentate, to judge, I look at that as a sign of respect in a lot of ways, for your ability to dissect stuff. So there are 100%, there are post-career pro surfers capable of this job. And if we change the packaging of what it is to be a judge and who gets to judge, and you reposition it as something of the ultimate credibility, your decisions are taken differently. The whole thing's going to change. It's the way the whole sport works,
Let me ask you this. You spoke about the ISA, you spoke about the Olympics. Let's just talk about the Olympics are coming to Chopu. Everyone's excited, but right now they're more agitated than anything. The IOC wants a new judging tower. The ISA has made their statements about it. What are your thoughts on this Olympic dust up?
I commentated Tokyo. So I went and commentated for the OBS, the Olympic Broadcasting Service. So in America, you guys had, you had someone else come and do it out of NBC or wherever in America, but most everywhere else heard me. And it was a massive honor. And it was a COVID Games with no spectators, with testing every few days, stuck in your little room, in Tokyo. And everyone wearing masks and all of that stuff. And I still felt it. You still felt that people, the world, coming together for sport. And when we grew up, there wasn't professional sport. There's been Olympic Games for a long time. You imagine where it started with people throwing sticks, javelin, throwing rocks, shot put. Well, it started from very, very primitive basics.
It was war games, basically.
Yeah,
it was
war
like,
games.
We're not
and people running as fast as they could for 100 meters.
That's what it was, yeah. But so tell me about the dust up, the Olympic dust up, the judging tower. Let me get you to focus on that.
That's where I'm going to get to. The thing that I understand from talking to Vahini Fierro, who's involved and obviously involved in that sense, is that the government is not going to allow future WSL events to run with that scaffolding. It doesn't meet standards. It doesn't meet the those levels of safety and security, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying what I know. This ain't what I think. I really, I've stayed out of having an opinion on it because obviously we care about the reef. Obviously we care about nature, but I don't know, mate. I don't know the background. So I'm not really the person to talk about this. But what I do know from talking to Vahini, who is hands-on involved, she's in that Olympic Games. She's been talking to the government. She's been talking to the French Olympic Federation. She's heavily involved. They are not going to allow in the future. There won't be a WSL event at Chopu if they don't figure this out. moving forward.
What about judging by drone?
That's what she told me, right? So if they don't figure this out and come up with a system and a way of judging now at this Olympic Games that can then carry on for WSL won't be there this year either.
That sounds a little bit like, I'm going to say leverage, but the dirty word is blackmail.
Yeah.
What about just like, there's got to be other ways to judge people riding waves at Chopu besides the scaffolding in the reef. What about drones? What about,
I
don't know, but
yeah, you know how much time I've spent so much time watching screens. So when I commentating, when I commentate an event, I don't see anything live. Right? I don't see anything live. All I see is the screen. And you're doing your best to interpret from the screen. But I know from broadcasting experience that things don't happen in the order that they present them to us on the screen. They might go to a break and they come back and show you a wave that was before the break, that they didn't have time to fit in before the break. And all of a sudden you think it's a part that happened at this point and has this influence and impact on the result, but it wasn't. It was another time. So there's a very big difference. And I think that about drones, you need to see it with your human eye. That's what you got to do. The rest of it's whatever. The most important thing is seeing it with your naked eye and watching it live, watching it in context of everything else that's energetically going on, because you see moments of greatness there that on a screen, desensitized through the screen, not emotionally connected to anything that's going on there because you're not even near it. You're in another country. Like, for example, Chopu, I believe the commentary for Chopu will be done in Paris.
Yeah.
Right? So you'll be sitting in Paris commentating Chopu. You can be wrong, is the bottom line. If you're not watching it firsthand with the naked eye, you can make mistakes. In commentary, you can get away with that. In judging, I think you need to be there. You need to see it. And the scaffolding, the water.
The scaffolding sounds like the only solution in your eyes regarding judging, taking away all the environmental problems or non-problems, whatever the case may be. You're saying that the boat view, the boat angle isn't worthy. We need to look at it straight on from something.
And when the judges judge on replays, they always watch a consistent replay angle. They don't go to this angle and that angle and this angle and that angle, because it's all of a sudden it becomes so confusing, and depending on the angle and the shot that the camera got. And of your one, they might have got a shitty shot and a boat comes up in the middle of it and you don't even see this moment, right? So that's why the relying on what you see first and foremost before any replays, before any of that stuff, is really the critical thing. All I hope is that when you think about that, is a pristine natural wonderland down the end of that road, and the wall of skulls was such to keep people out. You know what I mean? It was it's got energetically, it's a powerful place, and there's powerful opinions on all the sides of this thing. And I saw Matahi Drolet just a couple of days ago on the beach with John, and they were going for a downwind foil together, and I asked him how, and he was disappointed, but I think that they're hopeful that they can figure something out that works, because my understanding is that it's not only for this. Now the world's focused on this and the scaffolding. What the solution needs to be a long-term solution that allows events to run at that venue, because if they don't figure it out for this one and they can't put something there that's going to allow it to be judged, it may not have events in the future, is what I understand. I don't know if it's, like you said, that's blackmail or that's an opportunity or posturing to create a better situation for yourself. If I'm the Olympic Games, I don't want to upset the locals. I don't want to create bad vibes. I don't, this is the whole thing with, the ISA is, their motto is building a better world through surfing. And that's where I went, well, this is something I can work with. That's what I've always believed. I've always believed we can create a better world through surfing, through what surfing does for you, the evolution of your consciousness, the connection to nature, all them things that surfing gives you will help you grow and evolve as a human, and can help the world at a point of divisive fighting going on around the place. So,
do you think there will be?
I'm just hopeful they figure. I'm just hopeful. I don't know enough to have an opinion. I don't have an opinion. I only go on what the people I've spoken to tell me. Yeah. And hopefully they figure it out and it's in a good place. I know that there was consideration of, hey, let's just take it to Hossegor. Let's go to France and go to the beach breaks. to hard basket. And that to me is not the worst scenario in the world either. You know what I mean? So that is an ultimate backup. But I'm not politically involved enough to know, but I just know that from talking to Eni, she was saying that, the solution is not just now. The solution is longer term and for the future of surfing events at that venue. And if out of this situation there's a great solution that's is good for the environment, good for the locals, and creates an opportunity to run events there in the future, maybe this point in time, like me having to lose at Manly to win at Pipeline, you got to have these moments. So while people can attach to this moment and the negativity and the arguments and all of that at this moment, I think the important thing for me is that this is a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing for the environment. It's a good thing for the place, for the locals, for everyone, because we figure this out and we move forward with it figured out. We don't figure it out here, there may be no moving forward. So that's the reality of the situation as I understand it.
Yeah, I guess my sense is that on both sides of the equation, you have what seems to be sort of, and I'm like you, I don't know much, I don't know anything about it except for what I read, but it seems like there's like some stubbornness on both sides. In other words, the local community is like, I feel like they're not budging, and I don't think the IOC is going to budge either. And if that's the case, if there's no budging, then
and that's what ISA, because I reached out to Fernando Aguirre straight away when I saw it and went, hey, what's the story, mate? What's going on? Where are you at? What's the, we don't want to be wrecking the reef. What's going on? And he said to me that this is, again, the ISA is not involved in this either.
I know.
They're at the bottom of that food chain, I suppose. And they give advice and direction, but
they're charged with running the competition. They're not, have nothing to do with the infrastructure. That's IOC stuff.
So it's another one of those, but I think you go through those difficult times, the complicated things, and better stuff's on the other side. And that's what I hope for. Imagine they come up with a solution that's environmentally friendly, that looks after and respects, and we can see an annual event at Chopu, and it's because it's changed all of the way we look at surfing. It's such an incredible way. And if they run the Olympics there and they get a swell, the world is going to trip on what surfing is, because we go back to those ancient primitive sports that it was based on, throwing a spear, throwing a stone, running fast. And the Olympic Games needs us. Needs surfing, needs skateboarding, needs snowboarding, needs these creative action sports to stay relevant and to be a part of that environment and to go there. And like I said, in those COVID games, I felt the world coming together in the name of sport. And the fact that there's all these people that don't have to get jobs and they play their sport for a living, and I got to surf for a living. To me, that's the greatest gift I could have been given. I'm so grateful for that. And so I feel like that's the gift for the future, is we figure this thing out, we get through these sticky bits, and hopefully they come up with good solutions and respectful solutions, and we move forward positively. That's, what we all hope, I suppose.
Yeah. I'm going to quickly shift gears to coaching, if I could, Barton. Some surfers have a stylish approach to wave riding. Others are more technical, perhaps points-based approach to wave riding. You, as a coach of competitive surfing, do you find it easier to make a dancer out of the points-based technical surfer, or is it easier to teach a scoring technique to a stylish surfer?
That's a fantastic question, mate. I love it. That's a really good question. And there are those, and I suppose if you're talking stylish, and we're talking Vans Pipeline Masters, and the most recent thing in our mind goes to Mikey February and that approach that he has on a wave. Then you'll go to Chiba, Japan for an event, and Mikey ain't going anywhere. You know what I mean? Right. And Isolo or Gabrielle, and they're boom, 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 and then you go, oh, how did they do that to that little wave? So there are these, when you are involved in an art form, a creative art form that is a dance to some, a job to others, and it's this broad spectrum, and it's something different to everyone. I don't work too much. Obviously, there's the technical space where this hand goes, where that, and that body mechanics. that's not a space that I focus on straight out of the bat, because I don't really care. Sure, you can make everyone look the same and make them all look good, and my mind would go to, even let's say Taro Watanabe, beautiful surfer, incredible style. Is there that much of a difference, say, between Tom Curran and that style? So what happened years ago and was determined as benchmark was studied. Hands were put in certain ways and things were, it's like the Christmas tree, and you're putting the arms of the Christmas tree in different places to make it look a certain way.
I'm still studying that.
Yeah. And so I don't really spend much time studying that.
Yeah.
I rather see the individuality and the personality and the style. And the thing that not sterilized, but created uniformity to that was videos.
Yeah.
When you couldn't see people surf, bar a surf movie that came out once every 6 months when we were kids. The movie had come out, and the thing I remember is Jerry Lopez wiping his nose at the bottom of Pipeline. You know what I mean? And I'd take off on one at Manly as a kid, and I'd bottom turn the video, and I'd stand there and wipe my nose just because I wanted to feel like Jerry Lopez. You know what I mean?
Oh,
and so that was as far as it went. Then you'd see the styles of the Brazilians, the South Africans, and people that hadn't had the exposure that I had in Australia to a lot of styles. And they had some, some quirky individual weirdness going on that I loved. It was so cool, mate. He looked like him and he looked like him, and they were themselves. We now live in an age where we've all seen what is considered to be good style and good technique so much that I dare say it's actually easy to replicate. So to be a free surfer based in that style thing is actually easy.
Yeah.
Not difficult, mate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not something I look at and go, oh, incredible, because it's been done for years. It's nothing new. It's retracing old ground. Yeah. But because of our romantic love for it, it's always good. It's always appreciated and respected. But then I'll see a Italo, Iago, Gabrielle, and I'll go, oh, now I ain't seen that's new. How much did he just make of that little nothing of, And so for me, they're different humans and different mindsets. Putting them together, comparing them is a pointless waste of time as an exercise. They're different things, but I definitely believe the free surfer route is the easy route. It's the cheaper route, and it's the way you kind of turn from something you're not very good at and find a lane that you're good at, and you exploit that for a career. The hardest route is going to compete. Yeah. There's no question about that in my mind. And you have to deny, in some ways, you have to work and surf to a system. You have to work and surf in a way that might not even be you, but it's for points. And in the modern day, it's really easy. I've got to say that. In the modern day of heading towards the vault, you don't want 6. Like, as a free surfer, you and I are paddling out there and we're looking for the one that tapers and gives us 6. I don't want a closeout that gives me 2. There's no interest in a closeout that gives me 2. As a competitor, you don't want the one that tapers and gives you 6. You want the closeout and gives you 2. So they don't want more than 2. Yeah. You do more than 2, you'll start to get less points. Right. It's the weirdest thing. It doesn't make sense.
That is weird.
And the quickest, easiest way to an 8-point ride or to a score these days is 2 backhand re-entries on a closeout. And it will more often than not score 7 points and above for 2 backhand re-entries that Damien Hardman and Ockie did 20 years ago. And that is to me, as a coach, that's what I go, hey, go out, find the closeout. If it's only got 1, fair enough. But if it's got 2, better. And it's got to stay tall. It's got to stay tall, right? It can't tape. If it tapers in any way, they lose attention span. Yeah. If it tapers in any way, or you do too much, they're not going to appreciate it. Yeah. 2 on a closeout on a tall wall, it's nearly 8s all the time.
That's amazing. I've never thought about it like that.
That's the recipe right now. 2 backhand turns on a closeout that stays tall, you will get a 7+ ride every time. And there is nothing futuristic about it. There's nothing difficult about it. And it's being done. Like I said, I look at now and I go, well, Damien Hardman and Mark Occhilupo today, they would be winning all kinds of heats.
It's basically like
that
Matt
about
Wilkinson. It reminds me of Matt Wilkinson
there you go.
or any number of backhand goofy folks.
Those good backhand surfers that come to your mind. It's really, at this point in time, it's the most easy to understand criteria that I most probably have ever seen, and it's all about tall wall, less is more, and just do something big, and you can get those ways without priority. And it takes a while for a young competitor to understand, because they're looking for the taper and the good ones too. It's just the natural way as a surfer. You want the good one. You want the perfect one that runs and gives you 6. But as a competitor,
it could also be argued that as we grow up in the competitive ranks, we're trained to go get length of ride.
Well, we were. That's what it was. It was the floor routine before, 100%, and it is now the vault. And I my belief is somewhere in between there is the middle ground that doesn't deny the performance art, but still has the spectacular nature of something big and dynamic. It's got to be said that narratives, people get into positions of power in a sport and have an opinion and voice that narrative, and then I watch the sport itself change based on that narrative. And I believe it's an unconscious change. And one of the great examples of that was Jadson Andre, Miguel Pupo come on tour. They can catch a 2 and turn it into a 10. And they do it so many times that it pisses people off who can't do it.
Yeah.
Right. And the judge, people start going, it's not fair that they can catch that terrible wave and just do one air and get an 8 or a 9 or a 10. Well, that's bullshit. That's not right. And the judging then, it got to the point where those guys went from getting 8s and 10s to 4s and getting better scores, Miggy and Jadson, particularly for backhand re-entries.
Yeah.
They both stopped doing airs. The judges sterilized the airs out of their performance, is what happened, because they wouldn't reward it because of the criticism that was circulating on the side. Right. So there's this criticism on the side. There's a subconscious change in the judging. They stop scoring the airs they are because they don't like being criticized. And all of a sudden, Jadson Andre and Miguel Pupo stop doing airs and get bigger scores for backhand re-entries that I can do.
Yeah.
It's not right. And what happened then was Joel Parkinson and Mick Fanning won world titles in the early 2000s without doing an air all year.
Yeah.
Right. And that's an indication of a subliminal impact of criticism on the judging system that had an impact over time. You didn't see Jaddy when's the last time you saw Jaddy and Mickey do airs?
Yeah,
they were the best too. I remember seeing them at US Opens going, oh my God, these kids are unbelievable. How's it they turn these things into nothing into? But that was a distinct moment in time where I watched, and no criticism of Mick and Joel, because I love both those guys and they're both incredible, beautiful surfers. But at that point in time, it was hard for my mind to imagine winning world titles without doing an air. Didn't seem like it was like heading in the right direction, but that's what happened. Then the narrative came on about length of ride and how length of ride was bad. And it was da-da-da-da-da. And now, as a byproduct of that criticism, we've ended up at the 2-turn 8.
Yep.
And that's, so I've watched the ebbs and flows and the criticism of the criteria, and then it subliminally adjusting to the criticism so it doesn't get criticized without even knowing it's most probably doing it. You know what I mean? And it adjusts. And so you see those things happen in the sport. And as a coach, my job's to understand where it is at that point in time. And now you just go for a closeout and get 2 big hits on it, backhand, you're on. You do that twice in a heat. You do 4 turns on 2 backhand waves for you, whether you're goofy or natural, and they're straight up, they're vertical, they're tight on a big, steep, tall wall, and you will get an 8 more often than not. And you need to do 2 waves, 4 turns, and you'll win most heats.
I read an interview with you that Matt Warshaw did a long time ago. And you mentioned that you had a run-in with Shane Horan and that Shane was purposely trying to get in your head. And you had mentioned Rabbit, and there were some others during that time that were probably famous for mind games. Michael Peterson before your time, for example. A few years ago, you and I watched Zeke Lau try to get in John's head. I think it was in Brazil or somewhere. And I'm wondering, as a coach, um, do you think that contemporary competitors now on the WSL play head games to that level that Zeke tried to do? Was that a one-off? And is that something that's missing?
Yeah. I believe that, there were some masters of that, right? And desperation and hunger and not enough food on the table will make you delve inside yourself to find things inside of you to get that food so you can eat. That if there's enough food on the table, you just won't bother.
Yeah.
Human nature, mate, lazy.
Yeah.
Largely unmotivated, largely want to really just be like a puppy and be looked after.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so when we did it, there wasn't enough food in that table, mate. And if you didn't get in and scrap, you weren't going to eat.
Yeah.
And so there were masters at game playing, and with Rabbit and Shane and Mark Richards, all of that generation, Sean Tom, all of that generation, they were masters at game playing. And they might have you in a heat a couple of days' time and see you riding a board and just go, oh, that board's different. Did you change boards? Knowing that you haven't, you know what I mean? And all of a sudden you're questioning your board because they thought it looked different. And you're going, oh no, does it look different? Is it bad? What have I reached my peak on this board? Do I need another? Oh no, and it doesn't take much. Simple little drop of a couple of words. You're not feeling good today.
Mm-hmm.
Gee, you look a bit white. What's wrong, mate? Whatever it was, that type of gamesmanship was around because we were hungry, mate.
Yeah.
And we had to eat. And if you didn't get in and mix it and scrap, you weren't eating. And then as time went by, Kelly had the money and most probably didn't need. There was enough food for him to eat. But there is an extraordinary competitive spirit inside of that young man that is beyond anything I've ever met.
Yeah.
And I remember Tavarua Island back in the early days on a trip when he was a kid, and I went with Brock Little and Tom Survey was the photographer, and Kelly was upset because he lost a table tennis event that night. He got knocked out early. He prowled that table tennis for 2 hours until a winner was decided. And I'm watching him thinking, wow, how's this kid? He's competitive. The minute the winner was decided, he went, hey, I'll play you. You and me now. Let's go. You and me right now. Let's go. And I'm going, wow. The night before it was a shell contest where everyone had to get up and give a presentation, do something around a shell, a poem, a song, a story, whatever. It was just part of what happened there every Tuesday night with the guests. And the boat drivers judged it. Kelly's turn. Oh, I'm not ready. And he's pretending to write. I'm watching him. He's pretending he's not riding. He wants to go last strategically and deliberately to succeed in the shell contest. Wow. I watch it goes on. I'm a competitor in my prime. Right?
Yeah.
In my prime. And I'm watching him and he goes last on purpose. Really good poem. I was impressed. I remember thinking, smart kid, mate. That was great. But he doesn't win it. And he checks the judges' sheets of the shell contest. And comes and goes, hey, you got a 10, you didn't deserve a 10. And he was bummed he didn't win the shell contest. He was bummed he didn't win table tennis. I couldn't care less about either of them. But to him, success was so important at everything he did. Didn't matter what it was that he was doing. He wanted to succeed. And that's what that's what drives you to 11. Yeah. So I got one and went, woohoo, that'll do me, bro. I'm pretty stoked on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But so there's the differences in personality that create that, and then there's the differences in time and what's on the table, so to speak. And so as the tables got fuller and fuller, the Brazilians came along with that desire. No one cared like them. And even if you look at Shane Dorian and Rod Machado and Taylor Knox and the generation around Kelly, none of them cared like Kelly.
Yep.
The old high five with Kelly at Pipeline, Rob.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that was an indication of the level to which Kelly had played and disarmed all of the generation around him. I remember when they made the final at the Pro Junior at Narrabeen, and they both rode when they were juniors, and they came to Australia for the Pro Junior, and they rode the final, first wave of the final, they both rode at Switchfoot.
Yeah.
And I remember all of us going, that's pretty disrespectful.
Mm-hmm. You're
in the final of the most important junior event in the world, and you two are going to just make it a joke. But Kelly made it a joke and then snapped straight back into work. And then his opposition never snapped out. Didn't even know that, Kelly had disarmed him by going, let's ride the first one to switch. But then got straight to work and the other guy was still switching his mind. He never switched on after switching off. And I saw that in that generation. Kelly played that game. He learned from us, mate. Yeah. He learned from our generation. He played that game and no one else played it like him or could compete with him on desire and on creative intelligence.
And probably, I also would suggest, and I don't know, but Kelly growing up as the youngest with 2 older brothers and not much food on the table, so to speak, he had that innately sort of nature over nurture, or nurture over nature.
And then he was able to see the perils of drinking.
Oh yeah.
And alcoholism and around him and he's in his environment, and he had the courage and the strength based on that determination to lead our sport essentially out of being a drug-based popularity contest, right? Where the bad guys were the ones from Michael Peterson all the way through, mate, where the people who were the bad guys, the naughty guys, the ones who were misbehaving, and they were the superstars. Yep. They were the ones glorified by sport. And when Kelly came along and didn't play that game, didn't have to play that game, he saved countless individuals from a life of drug and alcohol. Even to this day, mate, he's just, for me, that's what, like, while all of the surfing and everything else is just the most astonishing, wonderful thing, his influence on our culture and his ability to drag it away from what was, back in the early days. You watch that film Sea of Darkness, you understand the dark roots of surfing with drug running, all of that stuff, into the companies and their connections to the drugs and being funded off the back of some of that. And I was watching it. It used to annoy me because I was straight and sober. Well, I drink, but not, and I used to just infuriate me the way the media would glorify the people who were doing drugs and who were the bad guys. And it was the way to go. And it took, we could just write a list of all the people that ended up in rehabs, and some recovered and some didn't. And I put myself in that basket, because at a point in my career after winning, it felt wonderful to be liked by people. And I was in a group of people because I did drugs. That's what it was. All of a sudden you were liked. All of a sudden you were cool. And I was going, wow, this is pathetic. But it's nice to have mates. You know what I mean? And so Kelly single-handedly, almost, through who he is and the way he has lived his life, has dragged surfing out of that quagmire of personal disease and destruction into what it is today. And that to me is his great, I see that as his greatest legacy, is the fact that he kind of straightened out the sport in that sense. And now there's parents involved, and the kids have got, you look at young Aaron Brooks, you look at the quality of the people we have, the young people we have coming through, and it's a beautiful thing. And it's largely because of that crazy desire he had and how dominant he was, but at the same time, how strong inside he was and how he didn't play the games for popularity. He just won.
Will Kelly Slater be given an opportunity to win a gold medal?
No. The Olympic Games, and to compete at the Olympic Games, you have to go through basic.
I know all of that. I'm just saying.
I don't think.
Do you think there's some caveat? Because there's been talk of a caveat.
I would love it. I mean,
because NBC wants it. The IOC would love. I mean, it's a good story. I personally, as a fan, would love it if Kelly Slater won the gold medal at 8-foot Chopu.
Yeah, we did a little bit of work earlier this year together, Kelly and I. And the first thing I said to him was, why? And he goes, why what? I go, why another heat? Why? Why another jersey? Why another heat? Why another contest? Why? And I said, if the why's strong enough, good. The why ain't strong enough, there's not, what's the reason, And he went, oh, good question.
And gold medal's a pretty good why, though.
The Olympics, that is the why for Kelly. That's and he said to me, he said, look, Bill, honestly, goes, I'm holding on by the tether. He goes, I don't know if I've got it to last that long. So he was considering it. He would go, and he would love to go, and we would all love it. And if he went there and he got it somehow outside of rules and regulations that exist in Olympic sport, which is very hard to see that happening. Yeah. And ISA is Sean Thompson I'm not sure if you know this, but Sean Thompson reached out to all the world champs and sent a letter to the ISA on behalf of all of us with all our signatures saying, hey, put the king in, mate.
Yeah.
King's got to be in. We want to see
Yeah.
him go surf Chopu. This could be because I see it like you do. It's the most perfect ending to the most incredible career. And if he went there and could very well win gold at that location, and with that focus, if he knew he was going, he said to me, he goes, if I knew I was going, we were about to go to Portugal. He goes, I wouldn't be going to Portugal. I'd be going to Chopu. He goes, if I knew I was going to the Olympics, I would be there on every swell. I would be focused in that space, and he would potentially go and win and walk away with the gold, and we would just all go, that was the greatest career in the history of sport.
I
no
think
matter
this
what.
needs to happen. I think when you think, I spoke with Matt George recently, and he said, hey,
Yeah.
look, Michael Jordan was friggin' in the Olympics. You
Right.
know, like some of the greatest tennis players, you know, like probably
Yeah.
Djokovic, you know, like Tiger. I don't know if Tiger was in the Olympics, but my point is the greatest in sport that were professionals, that are professionals, have just been given the opportunity to be in it. And I think that we owe that to the
Yeah.
world to give Kelly that opportunity. And it's not because, like, if he couldn't win it, I'd be like, it's over. Let's not do it. If it was in Japan, I'd be like, oh, well, forget it.
Yeah.
But it's a Chopu. He could easily win. There's no doubt.
Excuse me. Yeah, I agree, mate. No, I feel the same way. I would love it. I feel like it's the most perfect fitting, end to a fairy tale. It may in reality be 2 years too late. And if something had happened, it came in 2016, not 2020, guaranteed, mate, it was happening. And it might just be one of those ironic twists of life and energetic things that means you don't get the chance.
Yeah.
Because there are rules and regulations where you can't just put him in because we all want him in. And that's the reality of structured, organized sport with direct lines of qualification.
Yeah.
And you can't, if you're ISA, they'd love it too.
I know everyone, that's the thing. Everyone wants it to happen, except
but
perhaps.
I don't know that you can walk outside the regulations of Olympic sport because we all like the idea, So time will tell. Who knows? But it doesn't feel likely at this point in time, from what I understand.
Barton, we've said a lot. We've talked at length here for an hour and a half. Let's
Have we?
talk. Yeah. Well, let's talk quickly about Barton Lynch Pro Surfing. This new video game, well, it's not new, but it's a new version of it. Allows the surf fan the ability to travel the world, explore through the perspectives of some of the world's best surfers in an exciting and vibrant way. And you and I, as users, can play as renowned surfers such as Felicity Palometer, Clay Marzo,
Flick
Palmetier, thank you, Nathan Florence, Vahini, Fiera, as you mentioned, and more. And the game simulates some of the world's most exotic and famous surf locations, including Pipeline, which we spoke about, and Manly, which I find hard to believe that that's exotic. I will give you that it's famous. Tell me a little bit about the Barton Lynch Pro Surfing.
Yeah, Manly's in there as like the beginner turf, so to speak,
Yeah.
And where you can learn to play in a less difficult situation. So it happened about 4 years ago. The West brothers from Bungara Software approached me and said, we're building a surfing video game. We'd love you to be involved. And I was like, yeah, sweet. I'm like, I don't see myself getting any other video game opportunities anytime soon. and I've never played a video game, for the record.
Yeah.
So it was a strange turf for me. And I said to them, I've never played a video game. They go, it doesn't matter. We da-da-da-da. I go, well, what do you want me to do? And I thought I'd be, making the contact as a consultant with the industry, which we did. So events are sponsored by Quicksilver and Billabong and, the big events brands in our sport. And then they asked me to contract surfers. And this was 4 years ago. And, mid production, their partner got bought out by a French conglomerate. So we were supposed to be out 2 years ago, but their partner got bought out by a French conglomerate who said, we want you guys out and we'll keep the game and we'll pay you to get out. And the boys, this is their pet project, mate. This is what they've always wanted to do their life. They're surfers and they're gamers. They want to build a surfing video game. So they went, we're going it alone. So they stepped out with no funding, no finance, no nothing. And so we're a completely independent production. Yeah. And that's what took the extra 2 years to get to market, was the fact that they weren't going to, they could have walked with cash.
Yeah.
But they just went, nah, this is our baby. We're going to do it if we're going to do it, we'll do it the hard way. So it's a miracle we got the market in itself, first and foremost. And then when it came to contracting surfers, anything could have happened in 4 years. Right. So, but all of the people I contracted, so Nathan Florence, you compare where he is today to where he was 4 years ago.
He's on
amazing. Yago Dora.
He's on the up.
You know, and then who else did we have? Solly Bailey.
Okay.
Felicity Palmatier. She's doing amazing things now, commentating for WSL on the Big Wave Tour. Doing amazing things. Vahini Fierro developed into the queen of Chopu. Mahina Maeda is a Japanese Olympian and represent Japan at the Olympics. And Clay Marzo. How could I forget Clay? He was the first guy I contracted. So all of the people that we contracted 4 years ago and me too, like, you know, what my social media reach and position is compared to 4 years ago. Now, all of us in the 8 of us in that time have taken our careers to a whole nother level that has all been good for the game. Yeah. And so as a talent scout, so to speak, and someone looking to contract people that far out, I feel like that's what I'm most proud of, is that I pick people who built their careers into something so much greater than they were when we contracted them. To our benefit, you know, and to theirs. And then they said, and we want to call it Barton Lynch Pro Surfing. And the first thing I said was, I kind of scoffed and went, surely you can get a better name than me. And I still feel like that. I was like, surely you can get a better name than me, really? And they go, well, we're using the Madden NFL model. And John Madden was a player and then a coach and a commentator. You're a world champ and the coach of favorite voice of surfing. And it's perfect for us. And your reputation, people know you. You're around. And so we get a young kid, who knows where he is in a couple of years. So I went, you know, I was uncomfortable about it. I still am, in reality. It still feels surreal to be 60. Imagine, I'm 60 years old, some hairy, bearded galoot, and there's this video game out there with my name on it. The kids are playing. And like they would have told me that 40 years ago, I just would have laughed. There most probably wasn't even video games then as a thing. And, you know, there wasn't a beard in my future either. So, I mean, I think it's, you know, it's one of those ones where for me it was a no-brainer because I'm not holding out for another video game project at any point. I was a little shy and still a little embarrassed about my name being on it, to be honest. But you know, we're out in the market and the boys have followed through, and it's a, you know, truly independent production. And in a point of multinational corporate globalism, I love the fact that we're with an independent production. These couple of brothers from Perth, Western Australia, made this thing happen, got it to market, fought tooth and nail to make it happen, and saw their dream come through. And it just kind of trips me out, blows me away, really. I go, wow, I can't believe this. It's a trip.
That's so cool. Well, look, I have so much that I could talk to you about, but we have come to the end of our time here. I would like to speak with you again in the future at some time. I always enjoy talking to you. You've got so much insight. It's incredible. And we've said a lot here, and I just want to thank you for being a part of the BoardRoom podcast.
It's my pleasure, mate. I love the chats too, because we always go to interesting places, and you frame things up that make me think and challenge me to consider the question rather than just roll out some rehearsed bullshit. You know what I mean? Which I don't really do ever, but I'm always winging it.
Yeah.
I just call it winging a prayer productions. You know what I mean? Because I never know. Even with commentating, I don't know what I'm going to say. No. I don't know what I have said. I come out of the booth and I don't even remember what's come out of my mouth because I just watch what I see and I say what I see. And it's the same here. I try to speak from the heart and give people a real true indication of who I am and how I feel. And at a point in time where it's not the most popular, it's definitely easier to shut your mouth and play a game. I mean, in reality, perhaps my political opinions at times cost me my job with WSL. And I don't get to commentate the World Tour. And I sit there and I watch events and I know I'm meant to be commentating. I see things happen in front of me that they don't see, that they don't even illuminate, they don't even mention. And I feel like, they just missed that whole thing. And I get so sometimes emotional, a little bit hurt by the fact that I don't get the chance to do what I feel like I'm meant to be doing,
Yeah.
But that's that. If you live by your rules, you live by what you believe, and you voice that, you got to take the good with the bad. And I've always had a big mouth, so I might learn to shut it up one day, but I doubt it.
Just kind of going along what some of the themes of our talk here today, you might be the CEO of the WSL. We just do not know.
I love, and again, I love my sport. What it gives us, I'm sure you'll feel the same way. What it gives us, and what it's done for people, and the opportunities and the careers to watch an industry flourish, to watch pro surfing flourish, to watch it go through all of those ups and downs and ebbs and flows, from positives to negatives to success to failure, and see it travel what have I been around? 60, and I've been watching it since I was 15. I've been around for 45 years watching this thing, and it's a gift to all of us. And then the other side of the coin is we can just paddle out and go surf any day, and we don't need any of it, because on its own it's good enough.
Which is what we're going to do right now.
Yeah, it's what we're going to do right now. Exactly, man.
Okay, Barton. Hey, buddy. Thanks so much. Until next time. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks to all the Boardroom podcast listeners. Hope you enjoy the show.